Hello and welcome to this Diablo 3 video. I'm Paradise and today I'm going to be talking to you about how to get an advantage playing Diablo 3 on release day. Over the last few months with the course of the beta, we've learnt quite a lot about how the game systems in Diablo 3 are going to work, how the characters interact with each other and with monsters, and some of the things that are going to be important considerations on day one, and what matters as you level up and go through the game. One of the first things you can do to get an advantage over everyone else is figure out before the game launches which class you're going to play. If you have had beta access already, or if you're going to take advantage of the open beta weekend, a great thing to do is spend a little bit of time with all of the classes, getting them to at least level 8 or 9, killing the Skeleton King, if you will, and just figuring out which one you like the playstyle of. I'm not going to talk about balance or which class might be more powerful, because all of that stuff can change. What I'm looking at is how you feel playing each class, because that's going to be the important thing for you. Blizzard have also begun to publish these spotlights videos on each class, similar to the way they did with StarCraft 2, pointing out the gameplay styles and what you can expect from the classes as the game progresses. You want to look at all of those because they will help you figure out which class you want to play as well. If you've already got that figured out before the game releases, you're going to have an advantage over everyone else because you won't be wasting time figuring that stuff out when the game's live. Okay, let's look at some of the game mechanics that are going to apply on release day and how you can use those to your advantage. The number one most important system is gold. Blizzard have been tuning the gold sinks that we can find in Diablo 3, and it's becoming very apparent that gold is actually going to be scarce. There are a lot of gold sinks in the game, and these are going to be really vital and good for Diablo's longevity and its economy, but it means that when you first start out, you're not going to be able to do everything. You're going to have to make really hard choices as to what you spend your gold on, because there's just not going to be enough money for everything. One area where you can get a real distinct advantage over everyone else is in utilizing alt characters. Stash space is going to be extremely limited. When you start the game, you only get the first 2 rows unlocked, which is only enough to store 7 weapons. Potentially you're going to be wanting to collect and store items for 4 other classes. Even if you don't intend to play them all straight away, you're going to want to eventually. And there is just not enough space in the stash to do that, and it's going to be far too expensive to spend your gold unlocking it. Unlocking each additional 2 rows costs 10,000, and that is gold that you're just not going to have. Fortunately, there's an alternative solution. Once you've gotten to New Tristram with your main character, go back out to the menu and just create another one. Create a new character of each class that you're not going to play immediately and just run them into town. It only takes a minute or 2 per character, as I'll demonstrate here, and it is going to be a huge benefit to you in terms of the stash space that you'll be able to save, as well as giving you an advantage when you do eventually decide that you want to play these characters. Each character comes with a free inventory that is 6 rows long, which is a lot bigger than your stashes to start with, and it's free with the character creation. So you're going to want to use up all of those character slots immediately to give yourself that extra space. Okay, fast forward 1 minute, and here I am, and now I can take the items that I had been saving for this class out of the shared stash, put them into my inventory, and then just switch back to my main again. That only took a couple of minutes, and as a result, I've now saved all of that gold that I can spend on other things. The next thing you're going to want to look at when you're in these early levels on release day is the types of affixes on the items that you're getting. Some affixes are incredibly useful right from the first item that you get, and others become more useful at higher levels only. For example, this Vampiric Hand Axe of Wounding converts 1.2% of damage dealt into life. However, at early levels, I'm not dealing much damage. I'm dealing maybe 30, sometimes 40 per shot, and 1.2% of that is, 1 or 2 health. It's not a whole lot of health, and I'm not in a great deal of threat in the early game anyway. Utilizing items with affixes that immediately give you benefits, such as Magic Find or Gold Find, is going to be a whole lot better. As a monk, my primary statistic is Dexterity, and adding 1 point to that is going to increase my damage by 1%. However, my total DPS at level 13 is only 23, so an extra point of Dexterity is going to be 0.2 additional damage per second. That's just not that useful. It's not going to change the number of hits I need to kill each monster. Whereas an equivalent item which had, say, +7 or +8% gold find is going to give me a larger advantage in the early game. As your character goes up levels, then this is going to change, and obviously if I'm doing 500 or 600 DPS, then an extra point of Dexterity is going to make a huge benefit to that. But for the early game, concentrate on those items that scale really well at low levels. Magic Find and Gold Find are the two big ones. As is additional raw damage, like +1 or 2 damage, cold damage, poison damage. Those make a huge percentage difference to the amount of damage that you do, and that can change the number of hits for a monster from, say, 3 down to 2, then you're clearing it a whole lot faster. When you find items that aren't useful for your character, the question is whether you salvage them or sell them. When you salvage a low level item from normal difficulty, it will typically become a subtle essence. Let's do this now. Which is this. And you can use those to craft other normal difficulty items. Now, there's a school of thought that suggests that because you won't be using normal items for very long, particularly once you're in Nightmare, obviously they're not going to be useful anymore, that you shouldn't actually waste your time in salvaging these low level items and instead sell them to the vendor. Which makes a certain amount of sense, but the primary problem is normal items aren't worth much gold. This is a magic belt. It's worth 39 gold to sell. That is not very much. The subtle essence and the fallen teeth are going to be more useful actually being sold on the auction house, even the gold auction house, where other players will find uses for them and buy them. And that's going to get you a better return than selling them to a vendor for a ridiculously undercut price. The other argument, of course, is that you actually will be able to use these subtle essences. In the beta, as an example, you don't really find shoulder items. They just don't fall very regularly at all. However, they are craftable. At level 11, you can craft an apprentice mantle, which will have 3 magic properties. Chances are at least one of those properties is going to be useful to you in some way. So just having an extra stat stick on your shoulder is going to give you an advantage in the early game. So you pretty much always want to be salvaging these items and either using them to fill gaps in the items that you're finding yourself, or even just to sell them on the auction house. It's going to give you a better return than selling the items themselves to vendors, absolutely. The other thing you can do to give yourself an advantage is, if you have any friends that are planning on playing with you on release day, consider pooling your resources so that only one person levels their blacksmith straight away. The blacksmith is very expensive to train. I've only got him to level 2 on this particular beta character, and it's costing me 6,000 to train each additional step within the level, and the levels themselves cost more than that. If I'm amortizing the cost of training the blacksmith between, say, a group of 4 people, it's going to be a lot cheaper, and I can keep a lot more of that scarce, valuable gold resource to use on other things. So, if you do have a lot of friends, and you're planning on playing with them on release day, and you can trust them to not rip you off, consider pooling your resources and only training one blacksmith. Another tip for you, as I switch to the barbarian here, is exploration. If you've watched a lot of beta videos, you'll find that most people who are playing the beta after all this time are extremely familiar with and experienced in how the random level generation works, and you'll find that they'll often skip directly through the shortest path to get to the end of the quest and ultimately to get to the Skeleton King. Come release day, that's going to be a suboptimal strategy. In Diablo 3, exploring the side paths and off the beaten track areas of the levels are often where some of the best rewards are going to be found. As an example, the defiled crypts which I'm in at the moment. There are 3 possible crypts. One of them leads to the crown, which you ultimately need to progress the main quest line, and within one of the other 2 there is a special event. It's either the Jar of Souls or the Lady Dunholm husband saving mission. You're going to want to find those. As an example, the Jar of Souls event completion is worth more experience than just about the Skeleton King kill himself. And it's a lot faster and a lot easier, and it also comes with a whole lot of free kills which have their own potential to give you items and gold and other good stuff. You really want to explore every corner of every level. Diablo has been designed so that you will get the benefit of doing that as opposed to heading straight for the exit. And by the time you do go to complete the missions, you'll have slightly more experience, you'll have slightly better gear, and it'll add up into being able to progress through the game, ironically a lot faster than if you just rush straight through the game. That's pretty much all I have to say, really. If you figure out your class, you pay attention to your gold, set up your alternate characters so that you don't have to waste any money on stash space, always salvage your items and use the crafting materials to fill in any gaps or even just to make a profit on. And finally, explore the areas of the dungeons and wilderness fully and pick up all the optional bonus side quests as you go. You're going to have an advantage over probably 80 to 90% of the other players that are just looking for Diablo 3 at the first time on release day. Good luck. I'm going to be creating more videos in the future, so if there's anything specific that you want me to talk about, maybe the economy or particular classes, builds, skills, anything, please leave a comment below. This has been Paradise, and I'll see you next time.